In this episode of the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast, we talk with Kathy Andersen, Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. Join us as we dive in deep on the subject of grants and what you need to know on the many available options of funding, community, and events that are now available to you and your business.
Grants seem almost too good to be true sometimes. And the way I say that is, we learn about venture capital and we learn about these things where you have to go through and pitch your idea and convince individuals to invest in you. You're going to grow it. You're going to develop ROI. They're going to get their money back plus some. Makes sense. Grants, from an outside perspective, and I'll say from my perspective, sometimes it seems like they pop out of midair. Hey, here's the thing: submit a business plan and we might give you $25,000. And everyone's like, that sounds sweet. I can write it on a piece of paper and submit some stuff. So my targeted question for this is, what's the ROI? And for the program managers, whoever manages these for these grants, they seem amazing and like a big boon to the community and individuals who just need that little kick to get going. But where's the ROI in it? And what's the catch? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, good question. And, that's another good communication with the grant manager, the program manager, and understanding the context. Talking to past grant recipients, that's another great way to understand why are they giving this grant? Who are they looking for? What can I do to stand out? And in this exchange of value, where do I play? I'll talk to 3 examples. So I'll start with a big important one, statewide, the Business Innovation Act in Nebraska. This is a great mechanism. The Nebraska Prototyping Grant is a very popular example from that act. Also the academic R&D side, etc. Now, they have mandated in the legislation around that act that they will review the performance every 2 years, I believe. And in 2022, they found that the return on investment for those dollars that went to the prototype grant is over $12 for every dollar put in.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yes.
Okay.
For the state, this is an effective incentive program that leads to the tax revenues, the job creation, the real estate and expansion activity, and the kinds of jobs and kind of money that is brought into the economy. That report is out there. There are other great factors that are measured, but that over $12 to one, and that number is probably even higher this year in 2024. So that real value, all the taxpayers get that value, and that's why we keep funding it. From Lincoln's perspective, with the Launch L&K grant, something that we factor in is the human capital aspect as well. We see similar benefits with businesses who either bring business operations here or start here and stay here or grow in Lincoln. There are the same tax revenues, jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And for a lot of these, tech or tech-enabled and high-growth companies, every one job that they create or every person that they pay creates X number of jobs in the community. It's called a Moretti multiplier. That's fascinating stuff. So, we have all of that. But the human capital I'm mentioning is these individuals who are building companies. They are building not just their own knowledge and skills and abilities and relationships. They are everybody that they come in contact with in their network that is also benefiting. And there's that tuition from building a company. We don't expect that every company who receives a Launch L&K grant must stay in business and must grow 5x, 10x. We understand the realities of startups and small businesses, that human capital investment is there. And we lean on these entrepreneurs. We tap them for things like mentoring, for giving back, for speaking, for talking about the impact that being in Lincoln, Nebraska has. So that helps our goals of building the whole business landscape and of marketing Lincoln as a great place to do business. I would say another that I mentioned 3 examples. The third one is, like you said, grants and different opportunities can come up. New programs are created, new opportunities, new requests for proposal, et cetera, come up when there are things like a pitch competition. If a corporation or a professional services firm or something sponsors a competition, the value of just pipeline or marketing or contacts that they make can be way more valuable than the prize money or the grant money that goes into it. So just a few dimensions on ROI.
Amazing answer. Thank you.
Yeah. There are other, we could talk about, prototypical business recruitment incentives and the comparison there. And there's some really good stuff on that too, but later conversation.
How often are there new grants coming up? Because there's a big one in Nebraska right now where it's like 25,000 for new businesses, and you feel like, oh man, there's a window and I got to jump on it. What if I miss it? Or I think there's a big fear of, with all the paperwork and stuff, or at least for me, I hate forms personally. So it's like, well, what if I mess it up and I miss out on it? How often, historically, especially like with your groups, are you seeing different opportunities come up for people to get some initial ramp up, some seed money to get some grants so they can get started?
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's probably not even for every community everywhere of availability of new programs and grants and competitions. It does seem, off the cuff. It does seem like a new program almost every year or every 2 years. And it depends. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when there was a lot of quickly getting out support for businesses, there were the utility programs and the PPP loans. And that was a special circumstance. But it does seem, keeping eyes out for those opportunities is always a good move as an entrepreneur. I would say you bring up a really good point that there's time investment and there's probabilities of success. And those have to be calculated in. And I think an entrepreneur, a business leader, if you can cultivate the networks of people who can help you see the signal through the noise and say, this is a good fit for your business at this point in time. Yes, you should apply for this. Or who you can go to and you can ask, I think I'm reading the requirements correctly, or I think this is how strict the guidelines are. Is that true? And you can lean on your local economic developer. You can lean on the state Department of Economic Development to try to navigate those things.
Are most of them coming from like federal or state programs that give communities money that they can then invest? Like, how do these grants kind of come into inception and into the world so you can kind of follow and understand that?
That's a great question. I think it is also our job as individuals who want to grow the ecosystem to utilize and capture some of those federal opportunities. That's not a given. People have to raise a hand and make a good case that Nebraska or a region or a city should, or an organization should be tapped to deploy some of those resources from some of those federal programs. So no, it's not a given. And when you do an analysis of different states in the United States and who is supporting entrepreneurs in which ways, you will see discrepancies in states that don't have programs like the Business Innovation Act, or states who don't have funds of funds, or like our Micro Enterprise Assistance Act. But in general, there is a mix of federal, state, and municipal resources, even philanthropic. So nerding out about entrepreneurial ecosystems, there is the MIT stakeholder model, and that's the 5 stakeholders. we had an MIT working group that was chosen from the eastern side of the state, and they talked a lot about the philanthropic, could be like the sixth point of the star. So yes, you bring up a good question. There are different sources of grants, and okay, if we didn't talk about this one, I would have woken up tomorrow and said, Kathy, oh my gosh, you didn't talk about America's Seed Fund. America's Seed Fund, aptly named because it is seed money that is non-dilutive for bringing more technologies into being, into commercialized companies, commercializing nascent technologies. That is a wonderful program, as I've mentioned, and it comes from each federal agency. As you look into the program, you quickly figure out that the NSF or the USDA or another agency has a different process and a different application and different technologies that they're looking to fund. But that's another important source of federal dollars.
So is it where different areas such as like states or towns and communities, it's really driven on kind of a snowball effect where you have a lot of the people who understand and are creating lots of programs to get lots of momentum and are creating a lot of opportunity there, but you might have different states or different communities that don't have, people in place who understand these systems to build this stuff, and they kind of don't get access. It's a bit of a flood drought type dynamic. Or I'm just curious on how all this stuff gets distributed and how different communities might be affected by that, where you have some that are kind of swimming in opportunity, and then you have others that really don't have anything.
Yeah, this is a great question. Yes, that is a factor. And it's all about systems and networks. And if you imagine a web, you want that really healthy web, not just of existing businesses and organizations and people who can help entrepreneurs, but the entrepreneurs who are building things and hiring people and themselves becoming the mentors and board members and leaders of organizations who then turn around into entrepreneurs, because there's capacity building in what you're talking about of understanding what programs and what resources can be mobilized to help entrepreneurs. So it's you can have one really smart person who leads the charge, and they snatch up all these awesome grant programs, but then that probably only lasts a couple of years. And if that person leaves your town or leaves that role, you need to have that knowledge transfer or mentorship, succession planning, that other people can take advantage of those opportunities as well. And, this is interesting. I'm not an expert on the federal government, but I notice that there are mechanisms that help equalize and distribute resources. So, for example, if you as a municipality or an organization, if you're going for a certain grant program, oftentimes there are stipulations that you get it for a 2-year period, a 3-year period, or 5-year period, and then you are not eligible to directly apply for that program again. They leave it open to someone else to take advantage of that resource. And likewise, I noticed a lot of programs, they build in stipulations that you are forming healthy networks. It's not just an organization in a vacuum. They're working with other organizations. The tech hubs example recently, wow, the stipulations on the cohorts and the collaborations that had to be formed there to apply. I mean, most narratives probably had a dozen plus organizations involved in order to get that application submitted. And then there are lots of good parameters on reaching communities that have been overlooked or that have industries or ecosystems that are in the wider country's interest that need more resources at this point in time. So good question. And yes, those are two angles on it that they try to make it a healthy system of distributing these resources for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I live in a small town, and it's a little bit disconcerting to think that like maybe we're missing out on stuff because you don't have like you said, to say that you had someone move away, which I was pretty close to our former director of economic development, and he moved to Arizona, and so you get someone new in there, and the new person's fantastic, but there's that gap of trying to get up to speed and doing all these things. And I don't know, just the idea of like how, if you are in a smaller community that maybe doesn't have that engine roaring, how can you actually, as an individual, start to try to get it moving, to try to get more access to these resources, or help develop those communities or the different groups and things that can start pulling in more things to get that momentum?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is a state organization, the Nebraska Economic Developers Association, and that's a great place to find colleagues in the state and people who are thinking about similar challenges, and a warm network, a warm email list that you can reach out to, and specific events to connect with people. I think we can really look at that organization as being an important link for just what you're describing, and we can hold that organization accountable to really help our economic developers be the best they can be, and be the best at their jobs. That's what I want to see. And then getting out of our own bubble, there are some great conferences and professional organizations like SSTI, where they do a lot to inform about what opportunities are coming up, what they entail, and how to pursue them. They're also, Bio Nebraska is a member organization, and they have a partnership where you can get basically some consulting time on what you could go for. Now, Tanner, that's a really interesting question. I think I love connecting with other economic developers in the state, and I would encourage people to share best practices and to reach out to make use of things like NetForce and all of those organizations. I mean, I think there's more we could do. I think Nebraska punches above its weight in a lot of arenas, and I think we should be ambitious as how we help our communities and our entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Okay, so first off, I want to clarify LPED,
Yes.
Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development, right?
Yes.
We nailed it. See, Tanner, I got it. I don't know. Anyways, and Kathy, you are the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. That is an awesome title. What does that mean? What are your roles and functions within LPED?
Yes, that means that my focus is helping businesses who are starting up or businesses who are scaling and growing. Our whole charter is increasing economic activity. And to do that, you need thriving ecosystems. We understand about ecosystems and the roles that entrepreneurs play, and how important it is to understand what entrepreneurs need. So it's my job to be out, to be present, to work with startups, to work with entrepreneurs, to help them get across barriers from starting or from growing, and to help them, be successful, lengthen the runway, however you look at it.
So with today, there's a lot of challenges getting a company going, especially in a rural community such as Lincoln or just anywhere in Nebraska. What are some of the unique challenges that you've been seeing consistently over the past couple of years, and how are people kind of finding success in our neck of the woods?
Yeah, a couple macro factors to touch on. Friday, we had the Startup Shop Talk, so hosted by Nebraska Angels, Josh Bartles, and he had up on stage Bart Dillashaw with Enterprise Legal Studio, Ben Williamson with Invest Nebraska, and Tolan Mabut with Company Cam. All very impressive backgrounds and very knowledgeable people. A macro that they talked about was, the downturn recently for startups and capital that's out there. And the Midwest is good at weathering some of those. We're a lot more even on the ebbs and flows of capital available or investment activity that's happening, but we still feel the pinch. So that has been a factor in the past couple of years, and it dictates how big of a round you might go for, or what your raising activity looks like, or your ability to grow and all of your conversations with your investors, your board, your customers. Another macroeconomic factor is workforce, which there are highly skilled, medium skilled, and low skilled kind of positions for different operations, and all of those are affected differently. But it's something we consistently hear in our work in economic development, and it's something that we look at situation specific, like how do we help more skilled people when there is a layoff? How do we help them find another great opening in the community, even if a job hasn't been posted yet? But if employers know that these skilled people are looking, that could move the needle. Or if we see, a whole sector, we have manufacturing training programs that help get people who are interested into all facets of manufacturing. And that affects startups too. We have in our current launch LNK cohort the Larkspur Upholstery, and they can do amazing training with people, but they need to find the people and they need to get them in the door and have great training programs and great relationships. So, those are a couple really big factors that have happened in the past couple of years. We can chat about other trends that are happening too, but those are two big ones.
So I'm based in Omaha. I lived in Lincoln for like 8 months of my life, and that's my extent of knowledge about Lincoln, other than I go there sometimes. I was wondering, from your perspective, what the current ecosystem is for startups in the Lincoln area and the outlook and where it's going. And I ask this because Wyatt, 2 years ago, had no idea about anything in entrepreneurship, let alone the environment within Nebraska and this area of the Midwest. And now that I'm in, we do a podcast about it, I feel like you kind of have the curse of knowledge. Like, of course, it's tons, it's huge, it's everywhere. But that's the group I'm in now and speaking to. But from someone with a more educated perspective on the entrepreneurship environment in the Lincoln and surrounding areas in Nebraska, what are you seeing? Is it booming? Is there potential here, or are you trying to seek more and get that boom?
And let's watch out here with that more educated kind of terminology. I don't.
It's easy to be.
We had a great contractor that was helping us on the house, and I said, like, "Oh, in your professional opinion," and he was great. He was joking. He was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, watch out with the P word."
I like that. I might steal
yes.
it.
Yes. So I think there are some really great headwinds for Lincoln that I'll talk more about. And there are some great opportunities and challenges that I'll also touch on. And something amazing about this role, because I've only been in this role year and a half, going on 2 years, and the stability of it, the constancy, which helps when you are turning the flywheel and building momentum. You have a base to connect people from which to act, etc. That's a really high level comment, but some things that make Lincoln great, and not just Lincoln city limits. We do a really good job of understanding that increasing economic activity, increasing business activity in Lincoln means that we need to think bigger. We need to think regionally, not just, the interaction doesn't stop at the city limits. How about that? And so we love working with businesses from all across Nebraska, inviting them here, seeing what makes sense for business operations here, and just personal connections and relationships. But that being out of the way, Lincoln is amazing. We have some factors of density. There are some centers like the Haymarket and Turbine Flats and the Foundry downtown and the campus that really help with those serendipitous connections and cross-pollination of ideas, people running into each other. We also have where the constancy that I mentioned is pertinent. We've, Motion celebrated 10 years in January. We've been doing this, and even before Motion, there was activity starting, people recognizing we can do it here, we can do big things here, we can encourage energy and innovation, and it will take time. I think early on, people stated it will take time. This is going to be a generation, and we're just showing up and doing the work. And Lincoln is wonderful. Like Greater Nebraska, you have those 2 degrees of separation. It is great to make business happen when you can get that warm intro. You can get to some data that you need, or a customer relationship, or feedback from a real user. That is something that we have here, and that's very important that we keep a healthy culture around. We need to respect those introductions. We need to show up and do a good job. We need to prepare for the sales demo, and it's good in that way. We have an amazing research university. The intellectual property, the innovations that are coming out of our land grant institution and the other universities, colleges, and community colleges in town is really amazing. Also for the entrepreneurial efforts that happen on campuses and getting students excited. That being said, some of the challenges is we need to keep making sure that new generations have places to lead, have places to show up and experiment and be entrepreneurial. And we need to keep engaging them and making room in our boardrooms and our organizations for people who are up and coming. And we need not the same old crowd, not the same gatekeeping of what an entrepreneur looks like or what an investable idea is. Bridging those gaps, understanding that great ideas and great entrepreneurs might not look like how they did in the past. I think that's a big opportunity that Lincoln needs to lean into as well.
To double click on one of the problems you were saying in the Lincoln community of really engaging younger people, I'd love to get your perspective on what you're seeing more there, because I would be interested in understanding like how entrepreneurial they are, right? Because in many ways, you have a generation now that is the most tech enabled and has all these connections to the outside world. But a huge portion of starting a business and being an entrepreneur is the amount of risk that's involved. And maybe it's just a bit of a stigma, but the generation growing up today is portrayed at least to be one of the most risk averse, not going out on a limb and not going out and staying inside and doing those pieces. So what are you kind of seeing happening in your community when it comes to younger people? Are they actually getting out into the groups and coming up with ideas and contributing, or is that more of a challenge that you are actively having to overcome?
You are right. Their risk aversion is there. When everyone is telling you, you need to get a job and contribute to your 401k, and the student loans are staring you down, and the cliff of health insurance. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of reasons there are pressures to be risk averse. Something that we see consistently with individuals who are very young to individuals who are older is that presenting a compelling problem really is motivating. That helps. It almost helps take risk out of the equation. If you can show, and something I'm really excited about is our Jumpstart Challenge. It's a reverse pitch format. So an industry vertical or a corporation says, here is a big problem in our industry or a big problem for our customers. And we have the customer knowledge, we can tell you about the situation of this problem. It's a big, juicy problem. That is a fantastic way to invite people, young and old, technologists and low-code enthusiasts, to come together and say, I want to try the design sprint. I want to take a swing at this problem. And so having real customer problems, real opportunities in the market is a big way of countering that risk aversion. But taking a different tack in this conversation, some really good things I see is like the Nebraska Startup Job Mixer. That is a tight knit group of folks who came together and said, "Hey, job mixer hasn't happened for a while in the startup space. We want to have those conversations. We want more access for those job roles and career opportunities. We're going to host it." And they hosted one in Omaha and then one in Lincoln. And now they're hosting them in different locations. They changed their name to be Nebraska Startup Job Mixer to acknowledge that. And the Husker Venture Fund in Lincoln and the Maverick Venture Fund in Omaha, I see both of those as being really strong places where people who are students enrolled in the university, get really involved. Their cohorts, their spring boot camp and fall boot camp, don't they have 40 or 50 participants? It's an incredible show of interest and participation, and those boot camps are real curriculum, real education in the industry. So
I love all that aspect because so much of it is community and actually getting people to interact with one another. Back in my game store days, a huge thing that I've always been a big fan of was the game nights, because you could have kids as 12 years old interacting with adults at peer level, playing games and problem solving and coming over with some potential drama issues or whatever. It's real life, and it prepares them so much more for the real world. And so I'm just a huge fan of, if you can get to people early to start interacting and start problem solving and coming up with ideas, and not just thinking of them as an adult as an other that isn't on the same level as them, but actually coming up and giving their unique perspectives. Man, you could tap into such unique ideas and have people be entrepreneurial and in junior high school or high school, and actually, like Wyatt talked about with the access to low code or no code tools, actually start building products or services and trying out their ideas and on the evenings or weekends, and testing them out in your community events and seeing maybe if there's something there, and getting that crucial feedback and all of those pieces that
and the
ramp
fun
them
of
up. Yeah.
competition and
Fun.
it's
It's a
all
blast.
there.
And that's, yeah. We used to tie it up with games. And so, of course, it's inherently that. But man, I find business ideas just as thrilling, if not more so, because it's just a big puzzle to solve.
And the 10-hour challenge that was started last year, and now Nebraska Tech Collaborative is taking it big, and they're doing one at Kearney and do a 10-hour challenge during Silicon Prairie Startup Week. It's good stuff.
That's great. Well, Kathy, you've done a fantastic job of answering our questions. What I want to circle back to is, let's go back to you. Let's go back to LPED. And you mentioned several events and several exciting new things coming up. Can you kind of summarize those? What's exciting? What's coming up for you? What lights your fire in the upcoming year from LPED's perspective?
Definitely. We're going to be hosting a Jumpstart Challenge. Get your teams ready. Get your fingers and your keyboards ready. This is a chance for individuals to come forward and solve a compelling industry problem. We will release more information about that on our website. It's selectlincoln.org. We link to all of our programs from there. We just yesterday had all of our Launch L&K companies in for the 2024 grant recipients. 6 recipients this year. Excited to expand that number. And I'm really excited about all of the companies. It's a diverse group, but it's really great energy, great momentum and progress they already have building. The Silicon Prairie Startup Week in mid-November. It kicks off November 11th. Oh my goodness, there are so many things happening there. We did a collaboration. We did Silicon Prairie, events across Lincoln, Omaha, Ashland, Council Bluffs, because we knew it could be bigger than the sum of our parts, bigger than we're going it alone. And there are lots of ways to be involved and lots of places that we need help and we have opportunities for people to take on leadership roles. So if people go to siliconprairienews.com, there's a link to the page about that week and a link to get involved. Yes, lots of great things happening in Lincoln and the Silicon Prairie.
Well, fantastic. We will make sure to put links and everything in our show notes and all those so people can get to them easily, as well as, the contact information for LPED if they want to kind of reach out to you and see what opportunities or other things that they can kind of get kickstarted and maybe get their business going off in Lincoln. So we really appreciate you joining us, and we really appreciate everybody who's made it all the way to the end of the episode. So we hope that you really enjoyed, you subscribe, but most importantly, shoot us some comments. We get some emails, we get different things, and we really love having a continued conversation with you guys and making the podcast better every week. Well, thanks again, and we will see everybody next week. Bye-bye.